All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to jump into Bitcoin and Ethereum, take a look at where these markets might be going, and also give you guys a little bit of an update around some of the news and some of the happenings that could be affecting the markets over the next maybe 30 days and maybe into the summer as well. Hopefully this will help you guys out. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back in to Tech Path. Joining me, Evan Aldo, of course, always having fun with
Great to be here.
Analysis. And we'll dive into that. We're going to get into some charts today. As you guys know, if you maybe this is the first time for you guys viewing the channel, Evan does a lot of our TA, looks at everything on mostly market cipher, but we'll dive into those charts, give you guys kind of a rundown. Also, make sure and put your comments in the live chat today. We are giving away a free CPI membership. That's our Crypto Power Index. It's an annual membership, so we're going to just select somebody out of the chat today. We'll reach out to you and just have you shoot us an email, and we'll be able to sign you up and get you in there, which is like a $300 value. So make sure and jump in. All right, let's get to our first story. Bitcoin and Ethereum prepare for next move as altcoins, of course, are gaining. We've seen a little bit of a fly on altcoins over the past few days. Avalanche, Thorchain, of course, now we're seeing Graph on the move. Many others that are really starting to kind of shake loose a little bit, at least some action that we haven't seen over the past maybe 6 months. Even Celo was on the move a bit. But the key here, I think, is going to be how Bitcoin and Ethereum really respond to some of the market pressures that we are seeing. And if you look at where and what some of the analysts are saying, this is one where we could see a weekend dip. This is just coming out today. Weekend dip around 37.5, and then possibly a bigger move next week with a new report. And I want to show, and we'll jump into, maybe we should jump into ETH first, Evan. Let's take a look at ETH real quick, just to get an idea of what you're seeing on Ethereum, because there's a little bit of a movement on Ethereum. What are you seeing in the charts?
Yeah, so Ethereum is kind of promising because one thing, you could start on your weekly on Market Cipher. You have a green dot, and usually these are indicative of, I mean, the last one you pumped about 50%, almost 49% up to, from our bottom at 2,200 up to 3,300. If that happens again from the bottom here, you'd probably come up to 3.3, 3.4K. Also, a few big things happening on ETH. Daily looks good with money flow, with curvature right here. If you guys are new to Market Cipher, when you have money flow coming up from the red and you get a money flow crossover into the green, which didn't happen yet, but it could happen, it's a very, very strong bullish signal. Where would that take us up to? It's going to be a high number. This may take a month, but let's see. Last time this happened, 45% down. Probably around here you want to map it out. 45, right around a big fib level at 3,700. This would take some time, though. Let's see if we kind of estimate. It could take until the end of April up until May. This is a really bullish case right here. Another thing, the last thing I want to show you guys that's really bullish is your 5-hour just had a money flow crossover into the green. This would be more of a prediction for the end of the month. Last time this happened, you came down 26%. 26% up from here would be around 3.5K. I don't know if you'll get there at the end of the month. That's kind of overly optimistic, but I think 3.3, 3.4K is a good prediction.
And with that, and of course, Ethereum moving a little bit on our CPI score this week. Remember, on the Crypto Power Index, what we're doing is we're dropping sentiment amplification on a weekly basis, but we do it twice a week now. So we're dropping on Mondays and then again on Friday. And Friday, we just dropped it this morning. If you look at the move on Ethereum, and let me kind of zoom in on this for you guys just a little bit. I'll just show you where this has been going over the past couple of weeks. It had really, the amplification had been showing a little bit of a downward trend, which is somewhat in line there, but now we're popping right there just a little bit upward, which is where if we see amplification again start to fly closer to where sentiment is holding, that's when we usually see a little bit of fireworks happening. So it could be in the cards for Ethereum to do a little bit of a move here. Let's go back to your chart real quick, Evan. I want to take a look at the current. When you look at the, would you say it was the 5-hour that we were looking at?
The 5-hour is more of a more prediction for the next week or two.
Right.
And these money flow crossovers in Market Cipher, when it stays in one color for a while, like a red right here, and then you finally get into the green, that's usually a good shot. I'd say 80, 70% shot that you'd come up at least a decent amount. We have a high volume node right here. If you guys are unfamiliar with that, that's where a lot of people like to long and short at the or trade at the high volume area. That's going to be big, 3100. And then we have a spider line, which is just a powerful trend line at around 33.4K. So these numbers, these areas are really strong. The thing we have to worry about in the short term is this 618 fib level. These are very strong fib levels. So it wouldn't surprise me, say we come up to this, and then you come all the way back down to 27, and then you come up. It's volatile. Nothing goes just straight up or straight down. If it did, it would be less healthy. It's more healthy to have a correction on the way up.
Yeah. So it could be looking for a really short-term potential slight gain if you're doing a little bit of swing trading. Of course, right now I don't know that I would jump into ETH with its on the climb or on a climbing movement right now. And again, if you look back at CPI, anytime that I see this kind of movement right here occurring is usually not a buy signal for me because the amplification is starting to rise. So it usually indicates we're going to start to see some action, whether it's sideways or if it's strong enough move, then it could be where we'll start to see some trends in terms of money flow kind of jumping into what you're seeing on the charts there. Now, what's causing all of this? The big key here, there are a lot of market pressures. Obviously, we know what's going on in Ukraine. But if you think about all the things that have been thrown at Bitcoin and Ethereum over the past 30 days, from inflation to interest rates, of course, with the Fed really adjusting, and then, of course, you have the CPI numbers, which essentially are the job numbers. And then you have what's happening on the global stage, a lot of pressure on the dollar, so many things kind of flowing in against it. I would think that there'd be more pressure on Bitcoin and Ethereum and not holding this kind of consistent $38,000 to $40,000 mark.
Yeah, it's a bullish sign. The only thing that we got to worry about is this is how it was, in 2018 for a while, just very sideways at Bitcoin around, $7,000, $10,000. Then you crash down another 50%.
Right.
On your big charts, like on the weekly on Ethereum, let me show you how it looked, back in 2018. Look at the money flow right here. This is how it was in July of 2018. You went sideways for, let's see, weeks here, about a month, and then bam, you just came right back down. That's what we got to worry about. So, what I will say is typically crypto bottoms out with the stock market. And if the NASDAQ has bottomed out, which it could be bottomed out here, which I think there's a little bit more likely than not, then we could see a rally into the summer. If the NASDAQ keeps going down, which I think it could bottom out in the summer, if it does keep going down, I think crypto could be in for a bumpy ride.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at the Fed raising rates, projects 6 more increases in 2022. This would be some of the things that help and could stimulate a movement issue in the stock market, obviously in a downward trend. So I think those kind of scenarios, kind of in line with what you're talking about, Evan, is that it does kind of have a bit of an interesting layout there. Another topic here, this was from really kind of just a breakdown of how the Fed's expected rates are going to impact the wallet. So this is the other category that I concern myself with, is when you look at new people coming into crypto, one of the key things is in many cases it might be a retail investor that's never been in crypto before. And these are the areas to me that become very volatile and potentially scare off retail investors. So for instance, they get into Ethereum at say 27, 2,800 right now, which in most cases wouldn't have been a good buy. And you get an implosion on that due to a stock market hit, and it bottoms out at $1,900 and they just lost so much money, and then we lose that retail investor, for a period of time. So that is something that I am in concern with as we start to see these kind of things moving.
You just can't let those 50% corrections bother you. I don't get nervous until it goes down 90%. Then that's what you got to learn with
everybody in crypto. That and that's the funny thing. We get a lot of comments that talk about, you guys are so calm. Why is that? Because we've seen this so many times, time in and time out. And the key here is long-term investing in crypto. And with that, we want to thank our sponsor, of course, that's iTrust Capital. When you're looking at long-term investing, the number one thing to do is get into a crypto IRA. One thing I do and I like about iTrust, especially with what they're doing, it's kind of this whole transparency side of things. I was just looking today at their fee structure. Transparent pricing, they don't charge you monthly fees. You've got a cryptocurrency transaction fee of 1%. You can do a gold transaction if you guys are interested in getting into gold. Peter Schiff would love you there. $50 over spot, and then $250 on silver. So not bad overall. I think a lot of people also think that this is a long-term process. These things are very fast to open. Remember, you can still take a tax advantage position with an IRA. If you haven't already used an IRA tax credit, you still have that opportunity before April 15th. So make sure and check out iTrust Capital, easy to use, and you're going to get a $100 funding reward if you jump in on our link below. Make sure and jump in there. I want to go over to the economy because this is a big concern that I have, and that is U.S. economy flashing a recession warning sign. Now, if we see that, if potentially a warning sign like this comes into, and I think the scenario that you look at, if you look back at the historical chart, I wanted to show a chart here. This is, let me zoom in on this right here. This is the overall recession response to what happens to high inflation. So if you look back, we won't go back into the 50s, but if you look back in here to the 1973 oil crisis, that's this zone right here where I'm kind of circling my mouse. You've got an inflation rate that's hovering around 13%. Then we drove up to almost 14%. And then right behind that was the 1980-82 recession period. And this, of course, is this bottoming out right here where we saw really inflation just literally go to the floor. And then in 1990-91, we had clipped up to what was about 6 or 7%, which is kind of where we are right now. And then, of course, we saw the 1990 and 91 recession. And then again, we saw that with a potential of inflation, again, climbing for the 2001 recession. So a lot of times, not always, but these signals do come into play. If we start to see whether it's a soft recession or anything like that, there's a couple of things that could happen. One, of course, the Fed will start slowing down the potential rate hikes. We will see an impact on what we will see in the traditional investment classes, stocks, bonds, et cetera. And I think a lot of people may look to crypto because this is something that I feel could be the potential safe haven now that it's become so well known. What are your thoughts on, let's go to Bitcoin, because I want to talk about Bitcoin and what that might look like over the next few weeks and months.
So, yeah, the main thing with Bitcoin, what I will say is if there is a recession, what people got to realize is price goes down quicker than it goes up. Even if we do go into a bad recession, you're probably going to bottom out by the end of the year. Even with the Great Recession, you bottomed out, I think, a little over a year. So it's a big buying opportunity when it does get really scary and you do go down a lot. Now, with Bitcoin, we had on Market Cypher a money flow crossover into the red last week. It didn't get confirmed. We came back into the green because we pumped a little bit. However, the thing is, right back here, this is how it looked with the weekly. It was at this level, and then you came down another 50% in the next couple months. That's what we have to worry about. It's kind of repeating that pattern. You could also go back to even 2014. It looked very similar to that as well before you came down another 50% about. Now, the thing here is with all this money being printed, with all the factors happening, this just might be the bottom of our mini bear market, and we could come up from here. The last thing to worry about is these EMA ribbons and Market Cypher. They're turning gray. Usually when this happens, here you were okay, but that was the Black Swan event. That was the pandemic. Last time that happened, you came down another 50% right there. However, for our shorter term, there are some things that are looking really good. I really like the daily here. One of my strategies for long term is to buy heavily when you're in the red in the daily, and then stop buying when you're in the green on the daily.
Okay. And
I doubled my money pretty easily doing this last summer when you just came up to this area. It took some profits up here, not as much as I wanted to though. But I'm going to stop DCAing, stop dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin when we come into the green here, because that's usually when you have a change of direction. Let's look at where this could bring us to. This is probably the most bullish scenario in the next few months. Here to here, 35%. If we come up 35% from where we are right now, around 55, 54K, that big area, where would that take? How long would that take? Probably around May. You could see that by end of April, May. That could take some time. That would be a realistic bullish expectation. Your other big bullish point, just like Ethereum money flow crossover on the 5 hour, this hasn't happened in a while. Let's see where this could bring us up to in the next. This is probably the end of the month prediction. 15% from where we are right now. Let's see. Around 47, 46. So it's definitely possible we could hit that by the end of the month, 47, 46. And then if the most bullish things play out, 55K, 54K by the end of April.
Yeah. I think the key here is as we start to see Bitcoin somewhat stabilize. I mean, it feels almost like, I dare say it, but almost like a stable coin in essence. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of volatility, at least over the past 30 days. When in essence, I'm always looking for that $35,000 Bitcoin,
right?
Because it's a great DCA. But what you're saying is that we may not see it if we start seeing these bullish signs coming in the short term. If we don't see a big impact from something happening on a global scale, something happening from a major issue with Fed and/or inflation really kind of blowing off.
I wouldn't get too optimistic about it just being stable, because we were pretty sideways at 60K at the 50Ks for a while back in December.
That's
everybody
true.
was saying, oh no, that means we're never going below 50K again. Nope, that didn't happen, unfortunately. So I wouldn't bet the farm on that one. In terms of really short term, what we could see over the weekend, if people are curious, it does look a little bit more overheated, more bearish on your hourly. You have money flow coming out and you're rejecting off of this big spiral line. You could come back down to 37.5K, like we were talking about. That article was saying. Wouldn't surprise me at all. That would be a healthy correction on the way up as well.
Yeah, and I think when I looked at when we were looking at the Bitcoin chart, let me jump back up to Bitcoin. It was showing this. I mean, it is showing the downward trend right now. So right now, that's the reason we dropped the CPI numbers on Fridays, is to get you guys kind of prepped for the weekend, because there is a lot of trading that goes on the weekend. Why is that, Evan?
Well, it's I don't trade as much on the weekend. I really highly recommend people new at trading. You take the weekends off. There's a lot of weird sideways volatility. There's less volume on the weekends. I think people, in this day and age, are bored. They want something to do on the weekends. When you're not working, you want to gamble a little bit on the weekends. I get it, but I will say, especially for new people, I like to enter most of my trades during the week.
Yeah, for sure. Monday is kind of the day that you get all the news, and people are usually responding on that. Let's jump to a couple of more stories here. I think these are the bullish signals that are continuing to kind of fly in the face of Bitcoin. South Korea is electing a crypto-friendly president who is now looking at deregulating the digital asset industry. This is one of the things we've talked about on the show before, especially on the gaming side of things, NFTs and metaverse projects. So many different innovations are happening in South Korea. And if we see this potentially go in this direction, lots of cool stuff could happen for South Korea for sure. Another thing is Robert Kiyosaki now predicting the end of the US dollar, says the war is giving rise to crypto as a safer haven than fiat money. What are your thoughts on that one, Evan?
Yeah, he's been bullish on crypto for a while. He's had an interesting prediction of Bitcoin bottoming out at 24K, which there are some of my models, some of my predictions showing the 24K.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting. I think long term, Robert Kiyosaki is usually always right. I mean, he's always predicting some crazy crash. It happens eventually, but I think he's right that crypto will go up with time. In terms of trying to day trade or swing trade based on what he's saying, I don't know. But
I think that's the when you guys are coming to our show, if you're new to crypto, maybe you're new to investing in blockchain, you need to treat this like any other asset class, and that it is a long-term play. If you're a day trader, this is probably, first of all, very few day traders are out there that can really win. Like an Evan, I would recommend taking his course. He's got a great course, so we'll leave a link in the description below. But for people that are not familiar with trading, you really need to understand holding and/or investing in long-term assets, just like you've done in stocks, probably like you're doing in real estate. It's no different to me. Long-term hold, especially in the big guys, the blue chips, Bitcoin, Ethereum, some of the L1s, if you're looking at things like Phantom or Cosmos, or even going in and looking at things like Avalanche, which is one of my favorites. So all those, I look more of a long-term strategy as it plays out for sure. I know we've got some comments in the chat, so we'll answer some questions. Everybody wanted to see the XRP chart. I'll give you guys the view of where the CPI is on XRP just real quickly. As you'll notice, sentiment is rising again. However, amplification is cooling off a little bit, so we had a little bit of a drop, or a little bit of a climb, but not as much of a climb as we've seen here on sentiment. So again, XRP, just so much news has been hitting. I think this is still the XRP army that's probably driving a lot of this in comparison to what we're seeing in the overall market right now, which is good. I mean, you've got a little bit of a move on AMP. So Anyway, XRP probably a little bit softer. I'm looking for either another correction or potentially some big news coming from this settlement that I think is impending very soon. Let's get into some of the questions today. ApeCoin, we did a video yesterday, so make sure to check that video out. Now, I will say this. We're not recommending a buy on ApeCoin. The point is that we always try to do with any of these market movers is we are giving you guys insights on research, news, all that good stuff, not investment advice. What we want you to do is go out and do your own research. Just like on ApeCoin right now, there's just so much news on that. And just be cautious with any kind of coin that hits the market like that. I always sit on the sidelines. I know I'm a little bit more conservative, but I'll sit on the sidelines, watch those projects happen, let them unfold a little bit, get some air under them, and then take a look at them. There's many projects that have done this and you've been able to win on them. So don't FOMO in. Just relax, and you'll figure it out. Thoughts on WMT? Thinking about providing liquidity. That would be interesting, I think, for overall. Here's one from Chris on hopefully Render will do something. This is one of our big tokens that we like for the metaverse. If you guys have not looked at Render, it's a great one. Have you ever looked at Render?
Yeah, I've heard of it. It's been there's so many I do TA on,
Yeah.
but no, it's not. I'm not high on my radar.
And I think the key here, and we're going to get into, we definitely want to keep, we're going to try to do a Luna and a AVAX update today, and we'll give you some insights on that. So make sure and check in on that. We're going to jump to a poll real quick, and then we're going to select someone from the chat here. Okay, here we go. All right, what are you guys feeling more bullish on right now? This month, Bitcoin is up a little, Ethereum not as much, but altcoins all in. What altcoins would you be looking at right now, Evan?
Zcash, I'm pretty big on. It's backed by the Winklevoss twins, number one. Number two, with everything going on, it is, even if some criminals are using it, it is sparking a lot of interest.
Just from a privacy standpoint?
Yeah, from a privacy standpoint. It's done really well. I've been in it since about 120. It's at 150 right now. I think it could possibly rally up to 200. It's looking really good on the technicals as well.
All right, so I'm going to pick Lonnie Shepard. You're in the chat right now. Let's bring Lonnie up on screen. Been watching your videos half a year now, Paul. Absolutely love the content. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to give you a free membership, an annual membership to the CPI. So we'll grab you from the chat and we'll link, we'll connect up and just have you send us an email. And of course, we'll connect up. We'll send you in a free CPI so you can start using the CPI tool on your own. Last questions, AVAX Luna, Matic. Yes, we're going to have a video coming out on AVAX Luna today. So that's coming. Evan, have you been overly bullish on last shows a couple of times? You've been overly bullish, they're saying.
Not exactly. A lot of people only like to look at titles. You gotta look both ways. I mean, it's hard to say. From my standpoint, I just look at the charts. A lot of day trading, and long term, I'm always bullish. But right now, it's really hard to say. We got Black Swan events going on. It's hard.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How do you go about trading? I mean, in certain cycles, when you're trading, you can do either longs or shorts. You can do swing trades. What would be your strategy today, right now, with this kind of flat, somewhat unsure movement potential?
So based on, my two main strategies for swing trading, I'm swing long on Bitcoin, been swing long on Bitcoin. And then I've been scalping short off of big spider lines, big areas, and locking in profits really quickly, taking partial profits. And then if we go way down, you'll make a lot of money. If we go back up, you just, get stopped out of the trade.
All right.
So that's that.
That's interesting. Because I've talked to a lot of swing traders that, will play that on the weekends, and we have a group that we do kind of some investing on and have some fun with comparing our investment moves. And swing trading seems to be getting more popular. Guys who are coming in real short, they'll look at these potential drop, and they're kind of looking at maybe the top 100 tokens, and that's what they're playing with. That's the roster.
Yeah.
Whether it's Luna, if you had swing traded Luna a week ago, which a lot of people were doing. Same thing with AVAX right now. 4 or 5 days ago, we had called AVAX at $60 saying, hey, this might be a buy. It had shot up to $80.
Oh, yeah.
Would have been a perfect, swing
Yeah,
trade.
swing trading is a lot more passive. I mean, scalp trading, day trading, that's active income. You got to really be on the charts. You got to really be paying attention.
Yeah.
Swing trading, you could get away with, you buy something, you wait a week, then you're way in the green. Oh, just take it, take the money and run.
Yeah. That's the thing I say is when you're swing trading, do not get greedy. Do not get greedy. That's when those things kind of come back and bite you in the buy. All right, so what we got, ApeCoin apparently is crushing it right now. I haven't looked at the charts. FOMOing into ApeCoin. Lonnie, wow, you're awesome, man. Don't worry about it. We're going to get you set up. Crypto Cash, Hero or Dome? Want to invest in? I'm going to look at Dome because this is one that has come across our project list, and we get reached out by projects all the time of us to do analysis on. That is one that's been reaching out a couple of times, so I'm going to look at that one a little tighter. Let's see what else. Graph is on the move. Yes. Why is it? It's interesting. Graph is a project that we've looked at a couple of times. We have a couple of videos on it in the channel. What I would do is, one, educate yourself on what Graph is. So watch a couple of the videos. Just search Graph Protocol. You'll be able to find them right here on our channel. But I think one of the things, as we see a handful of these projects, the keys are follow the narratives within these. And AVAX is a good example. It's been on the move here recently with a lot of news. But they have their developer conference coming up. There's a lot of things. It's kind of like what happened in Lisbon with Solana. But remember, don't get caught short because you want to sell the news by the rumor. And that's if you're playing narratives on that. So anyway, we're gonna wrap it up today. Again, if you guys are over on the podcast right now, make sure and tune in here. Now, you can click links inside our podcast as well. So if you are listening to the podcast and you want to get to some of these links, click to the About section in your podcast right there on your browser or within your podcast player, and you can actually activate a link in there, jump into the Diamond Circle, get to Evan's courses, all those kind of things. If you're, of course, wanting to check out the charts, you got to do that on the YouTube channel. So come over here, subscribe, like a few videos, and you'll get some notifications of all kinds of new stuff. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.